everybody, and welcome back to Showverse. My name is Haley Morales, and today we're going to be talking about the original Justice League. Before we get started, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Check out our website for all of the things that we're doing, and please be sure to follow our newsletter. That's going to be like one of the first places to find all the projects that we're working on, and we're bringing a lot to you right now. It goes out the first week of every month, gives you a little overview of stuff that we're working on, updates on projects as they come out. You can also find some of this information on our Discord, which will also be linked below. Some of the stuff you're still going to hear about first in the newsletter. So Discord, newsletter, whichever you choose, come hang out with us. Check out our things. Also, you'll find on the website a place to donate to Kai's Corner Productions. That helps pay people like me on the channel, including Kai and Gwen B. Short, everybody on the channel, as well as produce our upcoming projects that you'll be getting those updates about on Discord and the newsletter. We have a charity project coming up, and you can also find a place to donate that pretty soon. It's in a couple months, but we're very excited about it. There's a lot of fun stuff coming your way, so please be sure to check all that stuff out. But let's get into the original Justice League. So, if you guys remember, 2 weeks ago, I talked about the Snyder Justice League. I watched that without having watched the original. I'd seen bits of Batman v Superman, and I'd seen some of the other stuff, like the original Wonder Woman with Gal Gadot, but I had not seen Aquaman or the second Wonder Woman at this point. I still haven't. And, is there anything else that's actually in this universe? I've seen a lot of Batman films growing up. I don't fully remember exactly what all is in the this timeline. I now saw the Snyderverse, and you can go back on the channel to be able to find my review on that specifically. Today I will be reviewing the original Justice League as well as comparing it to the Snyder Cut. I kind of like having watched the Snyder Cut first, so that it wasn't tainted by what the original movie was. But let's go ahead and get into it. You'll see me looking over here. I have my notes because I took notes while watching. And my first note is, holy crap, the CGI lip is literally the first scene. We've all heard about how Henry Cavill had a mustache for part of the filming, and so like they had to CGI a clean lip, and it's not good. I didn't know it was literally the very first scene that we see. It doesn't look good, and it doesn't help that it's like kind of grainy because it's supposed to be on like a camera. That these two kids are like quickly interviewing him while he was at a scene, and he was just like being nice to answer some questions. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. It's so bad, and it's so early on. And that's kind of going to be a little bit of I think throughout the movie. The CGI isn't the greatest. That can also have me jump into the overall look of this movie is so much brighter than Snyderverse, and I like it so much more. I can actually see what's on screen. I hate when it's too dark, when the scenes are too dark. Some of the Snyderverse stuff, like on reflection, looked like strangely dark, and I think, and it was partially because we now have these original scenes, and I can see how bright they were. So maybe some of the editing didn't quite darken it in a more natural way. But I like being able to see things, and that they're like the night scenes were still dark, but like the day scenes looked like day, and it was good. I enjoy being able to actually see the movie that I'm watching. Obviously there was, Joss Whedon's touch throughout the movie, and there were definitely some points where you could feel it. You're like, oh, this was a scene Joss Whedon did. I can tell. Because it's got some of that attempt at like bringing Marvel humor in, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. I have it noted in, we'll kind of follow the movie just because that's how my notes are set up. I do like that we start the movie, but right after the lip scene, with Batman already fighting a parademon and like showing that he and Alfred are already working on this case, and we got to see Batman in his suit right away, so there wasn't that weird where he showed up like an hour and a half into the Snyderverse, and we see him in his suit, and there's a guitar riff, and it's like trying to be super epic, but he's just standing there. This one, there wasn't the guitar riff, but he's like doing action, and it looks cool. Like a robber just turns, and so we see him on the wall, like on a neighboring building, and it looks cool. He's in action. He's doing stuff. It shows that Batman still has some like capability outside of being able to find people in finance things. Like he was using that robber's fear to get a parademon to get up closer so that he could like interact with it more. And it was cool because you could tell he's already been working on it. He knows that they are drawn to fear. I liked opening up like that. It starts you right in the action. It keeps the adrenaline going. And that's one thing I noticed in both the Snyderverse and this one, is that for the most part, it like I use this is the highs and the lows, and the Snyder Cut tries to use music to keep your adrenaline around here most of the time. This movie fluctuates and it still gets a little bit lower, but it doesn't stay in things for as long. So we feel the momentum. It feels like things are happening quicker. Like the movie itself takes place in a pretty short amount of time, both the Snyderverse and this one. So this makes more sense because we feel like we're in motion. We're getting things done. We're not sitting in a scene for like 5 seconds too long on each frame. Like we just keep moving, and it's great. I prefer this. Can you tell I already have a bit more of a positive outlook on this movie than I did the Snyderverse? I'm sorry. There's definitely some things the Snyderverse did right. I have them in my notes. Don't even worry about it. Okay. One thing I liked is that not only did we see Batman interacting with a parademon from the start, so we could tell this has been a problem, we don't know it's directly tied to Soup's dying, of Superman dying, right away. Whereas in the Snyder Cut, because we start with a scene of Superman dying and his screech, like opening the mother boxes and like calling things, like it already tells you why. And I like that it was just like, oh, what's happening? What the heck is that thing? Was nice. In this one, you didn't immediately know, oh, it's because Superman died that these things are around now. It was a scout. It was just a scout. It was just, we didn't know yet. It was great. I thought it was awesome. Because there's not a ton of slow-mo in the action scenes, it's way more fast-paced, and it keeps my adrenaline in the fight. Like I feel like I'm more in it during the fight scenes as well. Because a lot of the fight scenes had so much slow-mo, like before hits and stuff, and it kind of takes you out of it. Because like, I already know where this is gonna land. Just do it already. Do that and move on to the next one. We see while Batman's trying to bring people together, he's like talking about the different things, and Alfred teases Bruce about like, should I go give Diana a handwritten note? Will you be on Bruce's team? Check yes or no. He was just like teasing him, and I kind of liked that. Since you're making this Alfred so much younger than he would normally be, the dynamic makes a bit more sense for them to just be a little bit more jokey. They're closer in age in this movie than they were in like the original comics. So it just makes more sense that they would have a little bit of a banter or dynamic between them. Not that the Snyder one was completely serious or like weird, but it made more sense. I don't know. It made more sense. I kind of like a little bit of quippiness, and there are definitely some quips that I don't think worked at all. You could very much tell Joss Whedon was just trying to add like the flair. But this was one that I really liked. It showed their relationship more than just Alfred constantly getting tea. Also, yeah, as I said that sentence, it made me realize that I don't think Alfred mentions tea. I think he maybe mentions it once in this movie, whereas in Snyder Cut, he talks about it on like 5 separate occasions, and there's like a whole scene of him, moving around. Like, we know he's English. We didn't need that much tea. I really just realized that right now. How much more Snyder added Alfred just talking about tea. So after Alfred and Bruce are talking about the different people, we go to Barry Allen at the prison going to visit his dad. And we find out kind of why Barry Allen is in the warehouse that we see later, that he's been moving underground and stuff. And like we get that exposition in this one, whereas we didn't in Snyder Cut. Whatever. But we see him draw face on the dude behind him in line. And I don't know. I feel like that fit a little bit more the Flash. He's kind of a more fun character on most of the time. I do know him mainly through the animated series and the Flash TV show, so maybe I'm biased for those mediums, but if 2 out of 3 Flashes are fun-loving, it makes me believe the character is probably more likely to be fun-loving than what we got in Snyder Cut. I'm not that he doesn't tell jokes, but they're just so much more awkward. You can tell the person directing it maybe isn't as familiar with that type of humor, so it doesn't quite fit the same. Similarly, Henry Allen. We keep his scene nice and short, and I kind of like that because the Henry Allen in Snyder Cut, I don't know, he felt off. Like, I only really know him through the Flash TV show again, so maybe that's just different. Could be just a different take on the character. But he just felt a little off and like kind of annoying the way he talked. I don't know, he sounded really young in the Snyderverse. I remember having that thought. I'm like, this guy's supposed to be, I don't know, he just doesn't sound right. And I liked this version because it was just short. They just didn't have time to fuck him up. We saw him for like a minute or two. It was quick and easy. We see him at the end too, and he's having a good time. Like, it's just so much shorter. You don't have time to really fuck with the character. But it still leaves it open for a Flash solo film to include him and extend the character out without changing how he was in the movie. Like, you don't have to strictly follow what you saw in Justice League because you barely saw anything. So it gives you more leeway to mess with the character when you have the actual, like, movie that they should be in, like their son's movie, to do stuff. When we see the janitor that he's in both, that discovers the parademon, is one of the first people that gets kidnapped from Star Labs. I do think in the original here we could have sat with him for just a little bit longer. Like right now we just see a slight silhouette, he kind of pulls some stuff away, and then we hear the parademon sound and it cuts away, which isn't bad at all. But I think it would have been cool to see a bit more fear on his face, like as the parademon like came at him. So just like just one like more reaction. Because right now he's just kind of still dead staring. Like it hasn't fully dawned on him what he's looking at. And I just think that would have been a little better. But we still didn't, like, that's like 5 more seconds. This is one of the few ones that like really needed 5 more seconds. Whereas a lot of Snyder's felt like it could have lost 5 more seconds. But yeah, I do think having the janitor react before we pulled him away would have been cool. So then we would be a little bit like, you're already like, oh shit, did the parademon just kill this guy? But like seeing that fear can put that in more. I mean, eventually we find out that they were just kidnapped. That's like part of the thing. But I would have cared a little bit more if I saw the fear, like that humanization of this man fully in that moment. Because right now, without him reacting too much, it just, I don't know. He seems like he's not scared of the parademons, so should we be not scared of the parademons? Not seeing the mother boxes at the beginning is so much better of a choice. In this version, we don't see the mother boxes at the very beginning. Like I mentioned, Snyder, when Superman's dying, there's like a yell that's pulsed out, and we see it ignite the mother boxes, and we find where all of them are. I hated that. I hated that originally, and I hate it more now. Because it didn't... We should not know where they are yet. Just being shown, especially being shown that one's with Cyborg. That supposed to be the lost box of men. But we know where it is in the first 5 seconds because we are shown it immediately that it's with Cyborg. That came out of nowhere in Snyderverse. Here, we find out that the box was at Star Labs, and we see, Cyborg's dad works at Star Labs. We're able to follow the line of thought that in like the path of the box. We can make sense of why Cyborg has it. Whereas seeing it at the very start, like in Snyderverse, we're like, why the fuck does Cyborg have one? Like it just kind of confused me more than anything. It definitely felt like, oh, this isn't information we're supposed to know yet. All right, I've been kind of putting it off, but Steppenwolf looks really bad in this movie. He looks really bad. He looks like he's tiny. Like, it looks like the armor is making him bigger. Like, he's got a little head. His head is so small, so little. And it's so... like, the CGI is just not great on Steppenwolf in this movie. It's just not. They really could have done with some of the money that was spent. Like, Snyder had a ton of money for reshoots and re-CGI. And their Steppenwolf looked pretty good. I'm not going to say it looked great. It was still very obvious CGI and stuff. It still was a little off, but like it was so much better than this one. I would say it's great in comparison to this CGI Steppenwolf. Good lord. The Snyderverse Steppenwolf actually looked intimidating to be in a room with. This one doesn't as much. He just seems, he's had so little. I do like in this version, the Amazons have like a plan that's like very, like in Snyderverse's, one of the soldiers had to like convince the queen to take the box out and to follow through with what the plan is, which is to lock the person in the room where the box was and like lock the rest of it down. This one, she just does it. And you can see that on her face that she's like, oh, fuck, everyone's dying. We got to get this box away. And it makes more sense that there would be that urgency that, this box that they've had forever, that they've been under the protection of, and now it's in danger, that they would, have some fucking get up in their step when getting rid of it. Whereas in Snyderverse's, she, like, had to be persuaded to take it away. This should be top priority. This is a war. You guys are warriors. Why do you need this much persuading to do what the plan is? So it makes more sense in the original that she just kind of does it. But in the Snyderverse one, the whole building goes into the water, which I do like, because that makes it seem like not only were you encasing them in all this stone, you were also going to put them down in the water, that maybe they would get hurt as like stuff came down. That made sense. I liked that. They didn't put that in this original, and Steppenwolf just breaks through the wall, and it looks like there's only one layer of wall in like the back of the building, and that doesn't seem correct. Like, if you have a bunch of layers of wall on one side and then one on the other, then they're just gonna go through that side. So at least if that's the same setup in both, having the whole building go into the sea made more sense. And I liked that. And it wouldn't have really extended the scene too much. Except for in Snyderverse, she does like wait for him to start coming out of the water before passing the box along. And so it should continue the pace of this one. But I did like that the building went into the water in Snyderverse. So like, there's still things I like about Snyderverse, okay? The part with the janitor's wife on the news was not needed in any way. Really could have cut that out. And Snyder did. He was like, oh, this isn't worth it. I definitely think that's something that like Josh added on to try to add more comedy to it, and it just didn't work. It's awkward. It's not needed. She doesn't really tell you any information besides that she thinks it's aliens, but we already know that at this point, so it's not necessary. What I do like from that same scene is that Lois is at work. In Snyder's, Clark dies and Lois just becomes this sad, depressed woman who literally can't do anything. And like, it shows her going through this like routine every day. But that's it. Like, she gets up in the morning, does this routine with coffee, giving it to a police, and going to the memorial site, and then just goes home. Like, she never goes to work. They even mentioned, like, oh, you haven't been to work since he died. So she just becomes a husk of a person because Superman isn't there. And that just makes her seem like she can only exist when Superman's there. And that's fucked up. In this one, she goes to work. She's still not up to her best, which is understandable. She's still mourning. Still a person that she was going to accept his marriage proposal died. That's still gonna fuck you up. But she's still going to work. She didn't completely shut down. She's doing fluff pieces, but that's fine. She's at work. She's doing things. She's not just in stasis until the man of the story is back. It makes more sense for her to be able to go to work still until Clark gets back. Like, when someone dies in your life, you still have to go to work. You might not be up to your best, but, like, you still have to. It doesn't make her seem as weak as the Snyderverse one did, where she was just waiting just in stasis because he was gone. So after the Amazon's box was taken, they lit the fire, which is the same thing they do, in both films. And Diana sees it and she goes to Bruce. Still good. And then this is when Diana tells the story of what happened and it shows the battle. True, the battle CGI is still not great. It looked better in Snyder's, but I think it worked more as like better exposition because we didn't have little hints of the story from the beginning. This is when we were told it. Sure, we're being like both told and shown at the same time, and you're supposed to show, not tell. But in Snyder's, we're just being told, but just from little bits. So then when we're told the whole story by Diana, we're like, okay, yeah, she's just repeating some shit from the beginning. Okay, here's the actual new information. And she says, that we took ours, and both the Atlanteans and the Amazons took theirs, encased it, and put it in put it somewhere for safekeeping. And the men buried it so that none of the clans could be tempted by it. Which makes way more sense than in Snyder's, where it says each, the Atlanteans, the Amazons, and men hid it based on their cultures and traditions. Because then the two that Amazons and the Atlanteans that we hear more about in Snyderverse than in this one don't like each other all that much. Hid them in almost the same way. And then men dug a random hole. This one makes more sense. It's in a hole in the middle of nowhere purely because they don't want any clan to be tempted by it. This makes so much more sense as to why the men are shown just digging a random hole in the middle of nowhere. Like, you make us look like idiots in Snyder's version. Like, but this makes more sense. We as humans, as men, we are fucking tempted by everything, and we're shitheads about it, and we'll use whatever power we can get. So it makes so much more sense why we buried them in the middle of nowhere. Whereas in Snyder's, it just said by their cultures and traditions, and it's what? That doesn't make any sense in like where the box ended up. When Bruce goes to pick up Barry, he has that line when he gets into the car where Barry's like, "What's your superpower again?" And he goes, "I'm rich." It definitely plays better in Snyder's. The music that he puts under that scene, the way he scores it, or the way him and his team scored it, definitely makes it hit more that that's supposed to be a joke. Whereas in this one, it just kind of seems like Bruce is too awkward of a person. Like, it seems more self-deprecating and less fucking rich. That's what I have. Which is what it seemed like. Which is interesting because that take, the fuck I'm rich, what other superpower do I need, feels more like it would be coming from someone who has a Marvel background. That Josh had. Which Josh has. So it would actually make more sense for him to do that one and Snyder to do this one that maybe came across a little awkward. But it was the other way around, and that was a scene that I think Snyder worked with and did better. because it actually came across as like a joke. I personally, I don't know, it made my fiance laugh more than it made me laugh, but like he had like a little chuckle, and I was just like, oh, I see that a joke was just happened. But in this one, it was just awkward. It almost felt like he recorded the line differently for each one, which he might have. There might have been some ADR to like fix the way he said it. But yeah, it definitely works better in Snyder's version. It's just a little awkward here. I also like that in Cyborg's background, in Victor's background, it shows him getting fixed by his father, and he has so much more body left. And it makes so much more sense that his father would think he could maybe save him when he still has like most of his torso and like 2 limbs left. Whereas in Snyder, he just has most of his torso and that's it. Like it just goes to like about his abs, his stomach, and everything else is gone. Like his head is there and that, but both arms are gone, both legs, and like the lower half of his torso are all gone. That didn't seem like it was salvageable, which does show like the mother box has so much power, but it makes so much more sense that he would have so much more of his body left, and his dad would see that and go, I can fucking save him. He's still got like the basic organs are still there, like I can save him. That makes so much more sense. So much more sense. And it also shows that like Cyborg isn't 95% machine, which he does still look that way. It does look like some more of the body parts had to be maybe, you know, cut away, but it just makes so much more sense. I also like how Victor and Diana have like a little back and forth with like Victor overhearing that Bruce Wayne was talking about him and looking for him, and then him watching Diana and Bruce talk on outside somewhere, and he's like watching from nearby trees, and then he speaks to her through the computers, and she's like, well, if I wanted to do that, I would have just said something there, because she actually knew he was in the trees. I liked that. There was a little back and forth. It showed that they're both smart on their own, and they're both capable on their own. That was one thing. Like, this movie in the original, these characters are a lot more green. Like I'll get to later, like, the Flash has never saved anyone in this one. And, you know, Cyborg doesn't know fully what his body does. Where it seems like they both, you know, have that stuff in Snyderverse. But it actually feels like in this one that they prove that they can still do things on their own more. The Flash doesn't. I'll get to him. But, like, Cyborg, I don't know. I feel this one's more believable, I guess. The Cyborg in Snyderverse seems like almost completely machine. He seemed like a complete robot. He was so serious all the time. He, like, looked at things like the way they make robots and aliens look at things with, like, a slight head tilt and, like, always a really serious face. This one felt like a human. Like, sometimes he laughed. Sometimes he looked a little scared. Sometimes he looked concerned. He just felt like a human. Which he is. He's a human with robot parts. He's a cyborg, not a robot. And it really feels like this movie understood that better than Snyder's version did. That version just felt so much more robotic than this one. When Aquaman saves a man that was in a boat that was attacked by parademons, I like how quick that is. We're like, okay, cool. Yeah, he saves a person. I like that the person's like muttering about the parademons in the background. So we're still getting a little exposition, but it's not crazy. I don't like the bright green blood that's on Arthur's hands when he takes a drink and he sees it. Because one, how did you not see that? Like, it wasn't on his hand at any time before that. It's on for this drink. And then the wide shot, it's gone again. Like, it's bright green and it's all over both his like fingers here and the cup in the close-up. And then in the wide shot, it's gone. And he never like wipes it off either, so it should still be there. And you can tell it wasn't supposed to be there, and that was something like Josh added later. And I don't like it. The green blood shows up again in the big fight where Barry gets all over him and he's like, gross. And then we never see it in any other part. It makes no sense. It was not needed. That was something I'm glad Snyder just cut out. Like, there was no need for the parademons to have this bright, like, it was like fluorescent green blood, basically. But it wouldn't show up consistently. And, like, we'd see the parademons get killed and there'd be no blood splurting everywhere. But then the Flash was covered in it at one point. But that was it. I was like, that in the glass is the only time we see this bright green blood. So just get it out of there. Unless you're going to be consistent about it and have it show up anywhere, like they get hit and you can, like, maybe some of their scars after they, like, get smashed with something has a little bit of blood on it. If you're not going to put in the effort to put it everywhere blood would be, get it the fuck out of there. There's no reason for that to be there. Just get rid of it. It made no sense. It added nothing. Nothing will be lost by it being gone. I also like, with the Aquaman scene, we lost the gratuitous shirt coming off scene where in the Snyderverse, like, it really hung on it and had all the water. It was a cool scene, but we've already seen Aquaman without a shirt off, without, like, taking his shirt off and stuff, and it was just played for whatevers. So it was weird to have that, and then also this gratuitous scene of him showing his powers when we've already seen him. So I liked it better that there was, like, a cool moment where the water still happened, like, it still came up on the dock, and you just saw, like, him disappearing into it. And I think, I was taking a note during this, and I should have backed up. I think you can see him, like, starting to reach for taking off his shirt. So then when the next, like, shot of him swimming without a shirt makes sense. But even then, it would make sense anyway, because we know he takes his shirt off when he goes into the water, because we already saw that. It's something we've already seen. We don't need to reestablish it every single time it happens. There's just no reason. Cool. We've seen it already. There's no reason to do it again. And I liked this version better. It gave more of that era of whatever, I don't give a shit, that this Aquaman kind of has, without it being so gratuitous like it was in the other one. I did mention that cool moment, though. The music does kind of come out of nowhere. Like, that doesn't happen too much in this movie, where, like, the music swells and it's like a pop songy, not a pop song, but, like, it's an actual song and not score. So that was a little out of, I would have adjusted that a little bit and maybe put, like, the Aquaman leitmotif or, like, thing there that I talked a lot more about in Snyder's version. But it's still, that's just a quick music change to make that scene a little better. It's not, it's really, I like the original versions better. When the box gets stolen and Arthur and Mira have this little talk. One thing, in Snyder, they mentioned that the reason, Arthur was weird, because he was on both land and sea, is because he was a half-breed or whatever. This one, they cut that whole conversation out, so there isn't the confusing, but wait, okay, so if Arthur only breathes air because he's part human, then why does all the other Atlanteans also make air bubbles to speak? We didn't have that. It was just understood the Atlanteans make air bubbles to speak. It's fine. There's no reason to be like, oh yeah, he does that because he's a half-breed. Well, then why the fuck is Mira making a air bubble? Maybe, like, using that original logic from the Snyder that, like, it's only because he's half human. She shouldn't be able to fucking breathe. Like, to say that he was on land and, oh, that must be why he's a half-breed makes no sense, because all the Atlanteans can come on land. So I like that wasn't in the original, because that makes no fucking sense. And in the Aquaman movie, I haven't seen it, but I've seen, like, the trailer and stuff. People are on land. The Atlanteans are on land and able to fucking breathe. So, whatever. Mira's in this. She has a completely different accent than in the Snyderverse. I don't know why the Snyderverse wanted her to have that weird accent, when I'm pretty sure in Aquaman and in this one she has the same accent, and then Snyderverse it's a different accent. Don't know why that is. I also don't know where Aquaman is supposed to land on the timeline, if this is before or after Justice League, because again, not seen it. But still, different accent. I don't know why. Aquaman's also so much less like a moody teenager in this one. Like, Mira explains that, like, if your mom was still here, she'd be the one that was supposed to go up on the surface to fight this guy, but now it has to be you. And he's like, okay, I need something from you first. And that's where he gets, you know, his trident and his suit. He just gets that from her then. I like that better than him just being like, well, you guys are going to have to take this on by yourself. And then he finally shows up to help the team later. It makes more sense for him to just be like, all right, you know what? In this moment, I may not like you guys, the Atlanteans, all that much, but I have to do this because this person just beat everybody's shit. Obviously, they need to be stopped. So it just made more sense for him to just be like, okay, for now, I'm going to work with you. Here's how we're going to do this. Like, I don't know. It made more sense. And it makes him seem less like a moody teenager that can't be reasoned with. It looks like you can actually reason with this guy. I do find it a little bit confusing that they don't mention that Steppenwolf is working for Darkseid, like, super clearly in this film. He does say at one point, for Darkseid, but that's it. It's the only time Darkseid is mentioned. And so you don't know if that's a person, a deity, a cause. You don't know what Darkseid is if you don't know the comics. So I do like in Snyderverse that it clearly defines he's working for Darkseid and it's a person. And that he's been exiled by Darkseid. Like, it makes more sense. In this one, even in like that fight scene where the exposition happens, it shows Steppenwolf as the one that came down to do the thing, which it makes more sense that Darkseid would come down. So I do think, like, Wonder Woman, if she had mentioned that it was Darkseid and Steppenwolf that came down, and now they're fighting Steppenwolf, that would make more sense, because we kind of had that in Snyderverse, like, that would, so then we know this guy's still a big bad, but he's not the boss. It would just make more sense. And also, I put it towards the end, but, like, that would also mean that the Justice League group, knows there's still a bigger bad out there. Whereas this movie, they end it thinking that Steppenwolf was the guy trying to do this, so they don't know that Darkseid is coming most likely. Like, so it would make more sense for, like, Diana to know that Darkseid was there as well, and now this is just his lackey. That would make so much more sense, and I wish they would have done that. That's something they did in the Snyderverse, but there's still a lot. Like, there was a lot of scenes of Steppenwolf talking to people back home, and like between each box and stuff, and I don't know if we needed all that. I just think changing the story that Diana told to include Darkseid would be all we needed to clear this up. That's not too much. I think that could have been very easily executed, and that would have made both of these a little better. Because then, in this one, you know that he's still working for Darkseid. In the other one, you don't get all the extra exposition. You could have cut some of that time off. And because it didn't need to be 4 hours. Especially after watching this one, I now really know, I think 2.5 hours would have been perfect for this movie. To include some of, take out some of the bad bits of this one, include some of the stuff Snyder did correctly, keep the slow-mo to around how much it happens in this one, and bada bing, bada boom, you got like a 2.5 hour movie instead of a 2 hour or a 4 hour movie that I think would have been really fucking good. Like, so you could include some more exposition, but also take out some of the stuff. It would have, I don't know. I'm not a screenwriter. You know, I'm not a professional producer, so maybe it wouldn't have worked as well as I think it would have. But it doesn't feel like this movie needed 2 extra hours of stuff, and it definitely doesn't need as much fucking slow-mo that Snyder has. The Flash is so much more green in this one. We're at the scene where he says, you know what, full transparency, never done the saving thing. I usually just kind of like push some people and leave. Like, I've never really done battle and stuff. I don't fully like that he is this green, but I do like that in this one, he picks a person up and takes him to fucking safety. Which is what fucking this Flash does! Like, I was so confused and, like, angry in Snyder's because he never picks a person up. Like, he just runs up and down the stairs while everyone's running to safety in that one. And I'm like, just pick somebody up and take them! Like, they can all be running for their lives, but then he also just shows up and just That could have worked so well. So in this one, it makes sense because he's more green, so he's still getting the hang of it, but he still picks people up and saves them. It makes so much more sense. I love the Flash. And the Flash fucking will pick a person up. He doesn't barely... In the Snyder's one, he like never touches anybody. And in this one, he straight up picks somebody up, and it just makes so much more sense. I mean, they didn't take him all the way to the safety. Like, the group still had to run farther. So he could have gone a little farther, but it still just makes so much more sense. So much more sense. Definitely something I'm glad Snyder took out was the Flash running and landing on Diana's boobs, and then him like quickly standing up and like, while Diana's on the floor like, oh, what just happened? That didn't need to be there. Glad Snyder took that off. And then also, I believe Snyder took out the parademons like picking up the Flash and almost carrying him off. I'm glad that was removed. That seemed weird a little. I don't know. Something about it seemed off, and I'm just kind of glad it wasn't in the Snyderverse. It's not necessarily bad. Like, definitely the Flash landing on Diana's boobs definitely needed to be taken away, but him getting partially carried away by the parademons probably could have stayed and it would have been fine. But I do like that Snyder got rid of it. Trying to give as much credit as can be done between the two versions. I'm also extremely glad Snyder took out Steppenwolf constantly referring to the mother boxes like they're his actual mother. That was really creepy in this film. Like, what the fuck? Like, the glorious mother, and like, I can feel her calling out to me. And so I like that he made them more, these are boxes they're called mother boxes because when they bring them together, it changes the world into Steppenwolf and Darkseid's homeworld. So making them more objects and less like his actual mom. And like him saying to Cyclops that he was birthed from her was weird. And I'm glad Snyder took it out. That was strange, and I don't know why. Maybe, I don't know. I have no idea if in the comics either one of those takes are more accurate. But if it's like this, where he's like, "Oh, mother," and you were birthed from her in the comics. I'm glad fucking Snyder deviated from the comics then, because it was really weird. That part was weird. Blah. I do like when they're like, "Oh, does he have the men box? What if he already has it?" And then Cyborg shows up and he's like, "I do." I like that he actually says the line "I do" in Snyder's version. In this one, he just kind of shows up and he's like, he doesn't have it. I wish he would have just said "I do." I think that would have made that scene like seem really cool. And almost a little bit quippy too. So I really don't know why Josh didn't have that scene, but like, I liked that Snyder did the "I do," because I don't know, I was like kind of sad. I was like waiting for it, and it didn't happen. I was like, why not? Also, there was a change here in the men's box was found in World War I by the British in this version, whereas in Snyder's it was found in World War II by the Nazis, because obviously the Nazis have to have found everything because they were putting their mitts in everything. I think both versions make sense. Either one is fine. I don't like that the box was brought to Star Labs when Superman died in this one, because that means the box was bought, they did a little bit of testing on it, the dad realized it could be used to save Cyborg, he took it home, did all this stuff, and then now this is happening. It's too quick. Like, that timeline seems way too quick. So I do like that in Snyder's, it showed up at Star Labs a while ago, and that perhaps Cyborg was maybe even saved before Superman died. I think that would make more sense. Like, maybe he was recently saved, like, within, like, a month or so. Even, like, that timeline would just make more sense. Like, it's too quick for all of this to have happened since Superman died. Especially since we don't get a ton of information about how long has passed. So, I don't know. Either way of finding the box is fine. That seems inconsequential to me. But it getting its way to Star Labs and then so in Victor's dad's hands makes a lot more sense in the Snyder version than it does the original, because yeah, that's just so fast. That's so fast. I also like that when they're discussing bringing Superman back, there's a little bit more pushback. Like in Snyder, there was almost no real discussion about it. They just all kind of agreed, like, yeah, this is probably a thing we should do. In this one, nobody's really thinking about it until Bruce says so, and Diana immediately goes, no, that's, like, messed up. We shouldn't do that. And there's a little bit of, Aquaman also doesn't think we should. Victor runs all the numbers in his head really quickly, and he decides that they should. And the Flash is kind of going back. I don't think he has a super strong opinion. I think in general he leads towards we should. And I also kind of like that Bruce fucking dropped the Steve Trevor bomb on Diana. That was fucking cool. I actually really liked that. I was like, oh, damn! I said that. I know it's a little bit of Marvel quippiness, but it could show that when Bruce is, like, if someone doesn't do exactly what he wants, he does get a little snippy at him. Which could show why he's so nervous about leading this group. In the Snyder one, leads it really well, which I also like. I do think him being the leader is good. It's just this one shows a little bit more growing pains of getting used to being around this many people, and like them all knowing his secret identity and working so closely with them when he's been mainly on his own, except for with the Robin that we know was killed because we see his suit in the Batcave. So like it makes more sense that he's got a little bit more of a learning curve, some growing pains of being a leader and working with people, that he would maybe drop a little snide comment to try to get people on his, like, in line quicker. And I do like that after he says that, the Flash goes, if she kills you, we'll cover for her. I like that. It shows, I don't know, it feels more human. You know how these are supposed to be like humans? It feels more human. I do like the line in this one where Bruce says, Clark was in this world. He grew up in it. He had a job. He went to school and stuff. He was more human than I am. That makes so much, because Bruce grew up rich. He grew up traumatized from an early age. He didn't have a normal life. Whereas Clark, even though he had these superpowers, he lived a pretty normal life on paper. So he was so much more human than Bruce was. And I like that they acknowledged that and used it as a reason for why, if there was a choice, Bruce would choose to bring Clark back. It showed that they didn't just want him back for his firepower. They wanted him because the world fully needs him specifically. Not just someone as strong as him. Specifically Clark Kent. Specifically Superman. I liked that. I really liked that. Again, it shows these are humans that have feelings and motivations that are complicated and layered. Rather than, I don't know, sometimes things felt more robotic in Snyder's version. Even with all the extra, like, Bruce wondering about his visions and stuff and anxiety over that. That's not in this one. That was just in the Snyder one. It's still just, I don't know. Something about these motivations make more sense to me. And I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But I personally preferred those lines and those motivations and stuff. Another thing, I mentioned that Cyborg seems more robotic in Snyder's version. And so it's a little more confusing when he comes to life in self-defense mode when Superman is like scanning them after he's brought to life. So that seems a little weird because he's so in control of everything. It's kind of weird that he wouldn't be able to stop the self-defense thing from coming up, or I don't know that it might be a possibility and do something to negate it beforehand. That feels like what that specific Cyborg would do. This one, the suit changes every day around him. Like, he has jetpacks and he goes, I couldn't do that yesterday. So that makes so much more sense when his self-defense comes to life for probably the first time, and he's like, oh shit. Like, he would know what it is because his brain is still hooked up, so he could still go, oh, this is a self-defense mechanism. I can't control the fact that my arm is turning into a gun right now. And so, him having the jetpacks at the beginning, him not knowing his arm could turn into a gun when the first time he fought Steppenwolf, showing that's like a thing that happens when he enters a fight. So when the self-defense happens and it's his arm turning into a gun, it just makes more sense. Do you see, like... So Cyborg being more green makes more sense in this one. Just because he doesn't fully understand everything. Whereas in Snyder's, he seemed too in control of everything to just have self-defense show up for, you know, a thing that he didn't want to fight against and him not to be able to stop it at all. I also do kind of like that in Snyder's version, the Flash has a lot more control over his running. Like I said, he's also way more green in this one. He's still really new. And I kind of like in Snyder versus how the Flash was able to use some of his time running to, like, the box entered the goo and came back out and was touched at the exact moment of, like, that was cool. I wouldn't have minded that being used in this original version, like that scene just straight taken, because like I didn't mind this one where the Flash just ran and it happened to touch it, you know, right when the thing, like, he timed it correctly, which also, you know, is still good. That showed a lot of proficiency with power in Snyder's version, so it makes sense for this Flash not to have one because he that much proficiency because he's never been in battle and stuff before. But you could have taken out some of that greenness and included that, and I think that would have been very good, so it shows that the Flash isn't brand new at this. He's had it for a little while. He's had some time to fuck around with it. I think there was a happy medium that could be created from Snyder's Flash and the original's Flash that would have sat well, a lot better to me. I also like how in the original, we don't see as much of the Flash running. So he still has a kind of awkward run, but it happens so... In this one especially, he's so green that maybe it's something he hasn't worked on. He hasn't worked on his stance. So it would make more sense in a Flash standalone movie of him working on his stance in order to move faster and then discovering the time thing and stuff and working on that. That would make sense as a continuation from this original. In Snyder's, he's so proficient in everything, but he also has that weird floppy run that I fucking talked about last time. And so that's weird. That's what made the floppy run extra weird. This one, it looks like someone who maybe wasn't a runner, and so his stance isn't perfect. So he could improve his stance, go faster, be able to, you know, start dipping into the time stuff. So it makes sense. Like, the floppy run makes more sense with this more green one. But again, I think a happy medium could have happened, and part of that would include his fucking stance being at least not so fucking floppy and a little bit more like a proper runner's pose. Would have really worked for that. When Lois, we talked about how in Snyder's, she had this routine where she went, got coffee, gave it to a police officer, and then would go to the memorial. And that's why she's there when Supes comes back. I really like it how in this one, they're like, well, what if Supes isn't, you know, himself when he comes back? And Batman goes, I have a contingency. And he talks with Alfred about bringing the big guns. Then he says to Alfred, time to bring the big guns, and it's Lois. That makes so much more sense for why she would be there than her being in her, like, depressed state of doing this constant routine, but not going to work. And why she would randomly be there. It's too happenstance. This version, Bruce knows she's important to Superman, knows that she can be used to pull him back to reality. So he has Alfred bring her, and she helps calm him down, and then they leave. That makes so much more sense. And it shows that, you know, Bruce has a contingency for everybody. That's a thing we talk about constantly. That was, like, part of the thing in Batman v Superman was him trying to come up with contingencies for Superman because he needed to make sure if he ever went bad, he would have something. And now, knowing Superman better, he knows like, a bad would mean he's not himself, and Lois could help him show who he is. So it makes more sense. I liked it better. I do still think that could have used a tiny bit of tweaking, but not even a lot. I think it's pretty good the way it is. There's a lot of stuff in these movies that I think a happy medium could have been better off. Sometimes that medium isn't actually directly in the middle. It's leaning more towards the original or leaning more towards Snyder. A lot of them leaning a little bit more towards the original. But, like, just... it shows that Batman understands Clark. That Bruce understands Clark better in this one. It's not random happenstance, and it still shows that he has contingencies, but the contingencies have changed since Batman v Superman to, instead of stopping his power and everything, turning to making him remember who he is. It shows that his opinions on Superman have changed. There's been growth. But he still has a contingency because he's fucking Batman, and that's what Batman does, is have contingencies for everybody. The line where Superman says, "Do you bleed?" to Clark is super corny, and I'm glad Snyder cut it out. That was really dumb. I do kind of wish the group would have fought Steppenwolf for the last box like they did in Snyder, whereas this one, Steppenwolf kind of just grabs it while they're busy with Supes. I wish they would have fought him, but it still makes sense that he would just grab it then, because the box was powered up and it was calling for him. So it makes sense that he would just, show up, be like, oh, sweet, grab and run, and not need to fight them again. And this also makes it so they have plenty of time of, like, power up. We don't need to see them get beat by Steppenwolf twice in one movie and then successfully fight him. Seeing them lose once and then successfully fight is fine. It shows that they growed. There's growth within the movie without needing to be cut down twice. So, while I do kind of wish they would have still fought, it's not bad. It would have just added unnecessary time. So it's definitely not bad. It's perfectly fine that, oh yeah, fuck, we left the box and now it's gone while we were busy dealing with Superman. That fucking makes sense. It makes sense. So they didn't need to fight him. So I kind of like that, but at the same time, it felt like him getting the third box was too easy in the original, which is why the fighting in the Snyderverse one makes more sense. Lois telling Superman that he smells good, and he goes, "Did I not before?" was weird, kind of awkward. I like that she was like, "You came home," or something like that, and he was like, what did I not before? I think Snyder's version of those lines were better. I can't fully remember exactly what it is, which is kind of good because it wasn't awkward and clunky and stuck out like it did in this original version. It's fine. Like, it just happens, and I don't, like... I remember Soup saying, "Did I not?" before, but I can't remember what Lois said to him. Which is good, because the only reason I remember what Lois said to him on this one was because it was really awkward. Like, "You smell good." Like, because she missed him and stuff, but it's awkward. It's weird. I liked Snyder's version of this better. Aquaman's little speech that he gives, where he's like, I don't even think we're gonna make it that far. I think we're gonna die. You're just this, and Diana, you're so pretty, was really fucking weird. You could feel Josh Whedon's fingerprints all over that scene. I feel back and forth, because I think the speech itself was really awkward, and I kind of hated it. And I was, like, cringing when he was like, "You're so pretty," to Diana. It was so weird. But I did think it was kind of funny that he was sitting on the lasso the whole time, and that's why he was saying that, was because he was being compelled to tell the truth. So maybe there's a version of that wouldn't be so cringy and could be done to still include the lasso bit. I am not a professional screenwriter or director or anything, so I don't know what that would be. But if I had to choose, I would just choose to scrap that part of that scene, rather than have it happen and be so awkward and so weird. Because that with him saying that to Diana, plus the flash landing on her boobs and stuff. It's like you're trying to remind the audience, this one's a woman and she's attractive, guys. Like, it's weird. I don't like it. There's another thing with, like, Diana's makeup is, like, fresh-faced in a way that it felt off. Like, her hair was always a little bit fluffier, and, like, her makeup had, like, a slight light pinkness to it that just made her look younger in a way. And, like, I don't know. It was a little weird, and I don't think that was a problem in Snyder's because I didn't notice it, but I didn't even make note of this. That's how well I remember her just being, like, slightly off. It looked like she was wearing, like, light pink lip gloss, which I associate, like, with, like, a more childish look. Like, she wants to look younger and fresh-faced. When the Diana I know from the Wonder Woman movie wouldn't. And who I saw in Snyder's cut wouldn't wear that. And so it just kind of seems like they were just trying to make her look young and pretty. And then all these comments about her and the laying on her chest and stuff. It just a weird sexualization of her that didn't need to happen. We can see that Gal Gadot looks amazing. We can see that she looks pretty. We don't need people constantly talking about it and, like, having her on her back and the flash on her boobs and stuff. Like, that was not necessary, and I'm glad Snyder got rid of that because we have eyes. We can see that she looks nice. We do not need all these characters pointing it out. Dear God, this red CGI background was shit. I mentioned how this movie was brighter, and that is one thing I think Snyder's version, with how CGI this last fight had to be, it being darker was better for Snyder's, because, like, you can kind of hide some spotty CGI with how dark the screen was. And it's not like it was impossible to see. It wasn't, finale of Game of Thrones level dark. You can still see what was happening, but it was dark enough to hide some mistakes, whereas this one, it's so red and bright and in your face that, like, it could have used a little bit darker, because there was clouds and stuff. It would have made sense if even the rest of the movie was light, that, like, this would be a little bit darker, and not having the red background and just having it like a dark, like a blue or a gray or a black, like, makes more sense, like they did in Snyder, because it was bad, and there was no hiding from how bad the CGI was. They definitely could have used a bit more budget for the CGI, and I think the scene would have been fine. I do like that the team was more put together at the start of the battle in Snyder's version. They had more of a plan, so they were working more like a team. But again, the characters were less green in that one, so it makes more sense that they'd be able to come together. But I still do think that this one could have went with, they planned this out beforehand, so they already have a thing going. Like, here we go. Let's get into this. And one thing that they could have used, that they could have cut in order to give a little bit more, like, time with the planning so that they could be more put together at the start, was getting rid of these damn civilians that are living near the nuclear site. Like, I get it. You're trying to add another human element. You're trying to show that, like, Aquaman sympathizes with them because he helps out people that no one else will help, and these are people who could go nowhere else, and that's why they live here and stuff. Like, I get it. And it shows, the Flash and Superman help them at one point, but they're just taking up so much fucking time, and the battle could have gone almost the same or better without the civilians being there. Which I think if you cut them out, every instance where you see them, like they did in Snyder, because they don't exist. There's nobody living near there in Snyder's version. And you gave that to a little bit more of the team planning and slowly starting to work together more. You could still get that done in the same amount of times the civilian took up. You wouldn't even really have had to add anything to the runtime of this movie. Just get rid of that. Add a little bit more of them getting a little closer and coming up with a plan, so that they can come into it as together as they were in Snyder's. I think that could have worked. Again, not a professional screenwriter, so maybe Maybe it's a little bit more difficult than I'm putting it out to be, but I like that. I do also, this is something the original did that I really like in this fight scene. At the very beginning, we saw Bruce fighting a parademon. He noticed that they didn't like a certain sound. I think it was similar to a police siren. He was shown finding that sound, having Alfred work on integrating that into both his suit and the car. And then in this one, in order to get their attention, he plays the sound and it aggravates them and follows them. That's showing that Bruce has the brain, the detective side of Batman. Hey, did you guys know that Batman's supposed to be a fucking detective? I know, the movies forget that a lot. This one actually fucking didn't. I complained about that in Snyder's because I was like, Batman's supposed to be a detective and all this stuff, and they really don't use that a ton. And they did in the original. He actively cut out Bruce doing noticing something, doing work to find it, and integrating it into his battle plan. So, like he shows he's a detective. I liked that better. I can't even fully remember what Bruce did to get their attention, to get them to follow him in the first one, because I know that was still part of the plan. I think he was just shooting at them. I think it was just nonstop bullets, which cool, that also works. But I like this one. It shows Bruce using his brain and seeing that, give him a leg up in battle, which is what Batman does. That's who he is. That's the Batman people love. That's the reason the animated series was so good, is because we actually got to see him use his brain and stuff. Let Batman be fucking smart and not just rich as his superpower. So I really liked that. I know in the... I even put in my notes that he used not just guns in the fight, but also his fucking brain. And then there was them saving him, and he's like, that's not part of the plan. And they're like, well, blame the lady. If she'd put it up to a vote, we would have left you. That part wasn't fully needed. I just think that could have been part of the plan. He brings them all together so they can do a power shot of getting a bunch of them at once rather than being swarmed by them. Having them swarmed in the middle and then being able to punch would have been fine. We could have just done that and it be part of the plan. This is also, again, where you see the Flash covered in the bright green blood. And again, just get that out of there. There's no reason. It's not in any other part of them being slashed up. So why include it? Just get it out. Cyborg got his fucking leg cut off in this one. Holy shit. This one, Steppenwolf was so much more badass. Even though he looked like a fucking idiot, he ripped Cyborg's leg. I don't know, actually, now that I'm thinking about, maybe it didn't get fully torn off, but he got hurt and he was pulled away from the boxes multiple times. I don't know. I kind of liked the battle sequence in this one. Again, I think there was probably a happy middle ground they could have found. But I don't know, something about this was good. I wish they could have used Superman's entrance from Snyder, where he shows up to get hit and then fights him and then he runs off to talk to Bruce. I kind of wish, okay, so Superman, I think bits of both fights would have worked. I think, because his entrance in Snyder's of him getting hit by the thing and just, what the fuck? And that was very cool. I liked that. But I also really liked how in the original, he come up, did a couple punches, talked to Bruce, asked where am I needed, he does some stuff, and then he's a lot more of an assistance. So because in Snyderverse, as soon as Superman shows up, the fight's basically over. What's the point of having any of these other characters? We just need Superman, and that's it. We basically just need these characters to bring Superman back to life, and he'll take care of everything. Whereas in this one, Superman helped the Flash move the citizens. Again, I kind of wish that part had been cut, but he helped the Flash there. He helped Cyborg separate the boxes. He helped by freezing the axe so that when Diana hit it, it would explode. He was a helpful person, not a I'll just do the project for you kind of person. He felt like a bit more of a team, and I liked this. So, yeah, showing that Superman works with a team was better in this one. It made it actually feel like they still needed all of the characters and not just them to bring Superman to life, and then Superman could have done all this by himself. because I know in the comics, like, Superman's super powerful. He technically could have done this all by himself, but I like that he was just working with the team, adding assistance where was needed. It's just better this way. I also like that Superman and Cyborg like tell a little joke where so he goes up to Cyborg and he's like, you know, what do you need? And he's like, we need to separate these boxes, and when they get separated, there's gonna be a big jolt. It's gonna hurt. Superman goes, I don't care. I want to live, because he's, you know, decided he wants to keep living for himself, and his family and everyone around him. And they separate, and the thing happens, and he goes, ugh, you know what? I take it back. I want to die. That was so funny. It got a full-on chuckle out of me. I fully laughed. It wasn't just a, you know, air coming out. I fully laughed. I don't fully think they needed Cyborg going, my toes hurt. How do my toes hurt? Well, with like a close-up on his robot foot and stuff. I don't feel like that part of it was needed, but I do think him and like Supes and Cyborg like laughing at that joke while they get up. I think that still could have worked. Like Superman telling that joke after just setting it up. It showed that they both can be lighthearted, because Cyborg is supposed to be a little bit more lighthearted. At least that's how he is in all the animated shows I've seen him in. And so I just have to assume if he's been shown one way multiple times and then this way only one time, that this one's probably more accurate, the one that was shown multiple times, than the super serious one that was only shown in Snyder's. So, and it made me feel good. Cyborg said booyah when he finished up, and it felt right. Like, it didn't feel out of place. It didn't feel super corny. Like, the way he said it, and this Cyborg, the way he had interacted with the team, it felt genuine. Felt like a hell yeah, but he says booyah instead. I liked it. It felt right. Not just the word, but the way he said it, the character as he says it. But also, again, because the team never learns about Darkseid, how will they know there's more trouble to come? So I do like that in Snyder's, that they know about Darkseid, and I wish they would have included that. I also want to say, I didn't feel exhausted at the end of the movie like I did at the end of Snyder Cut. The end of Snyder's Cut, it'd been 4 hours. I'd spent 3 hours watching, stopped to play some Dungeons and Dragons, and then I finished up the last hour. And I was just exhausted by the end. There was so much slow-mo that I felt like slogging through. I know I mentioned that it doesn't super bog down, but in comparison, now that I have what it was and what he turned it into, it feels worse now. Like we didn't need all that slow-mo, and actually a lot of the scenes, especially the fight scenes, work so much better without it, because you get the adrenaline of what a real fight would be. Well, kind of a real fight. Obviously, powers and aliens and shit, but still. Whereas in this one, I was actually kind of ready to fucking go. I mean, I say this, I actually wrote this note before Lois's narration where it showed everybody later. I don't know if that was necessary. I don't know if that was needed. But, like, right before that part, if, like, it had ended right there, I was hyped up. I was like, hell yeah. I was in a really good mood at the end of this movie. It felt good to watch. And the Snyder Cut felt kind of exhausting to watch. It made me, like, realize how tired I was at the end of the Snyder Cut. Okay, so Lois's narration that it ends with. It's really not needed, but I don't mind it. So, like, I think it could have been cut, but it wouldn't have ruined the movie. It doesn't ruin the movie, but it could have been cut. At the end of the day, I like the original. If I was told, end of the world, if you don't make a choice, the world's gonna die or something, you have to choose to only ever watch the original Justice League or only ever watch the Snyder Cut, like when you want to watch the Justice League, I would choose the original. It's a little clunky at times. The CGI could have used a little bit more time and effort on. It was probably, jumbled up with the change of directors, that I bet the filming got partially delayed, and so it made the post a little bit jumbled in what they wanted to do, and they had to focus so much on getting the mustache, and, like, I see where it happened, but if they had just, been able to finish it to the level that they were able to do with Snyder's, this movie would be really good. I really think it's the bad CGI that mainly brings people out, and the few Joss Whedon Marvel-ish quips that are put in. And some of them, like I said, could have stayed. Some of them really needed to be taken out or reworked to fit more of these characters in this style of movie that it was being created. But overall, I really like this one better. Originally, I was giving Snyder a 6 or 7 out of 10, but for a 4-hour movie, yikes. For this one, I want to give this like a 7 or 8, and I want to move Snyder's down to a 5 or 6. Like, in comparison, it makes that movie seem worse. And I like this movie. Like, I can see where some fixes would be made, but it really isn't that bad. Like, it feels like things were explained enough. There was a couple things that could have used a little bit more explanation. Couple things that could have used a little bit more time. But there were also a couple, like, the civilians that could have been cut. And maybe add in, like, 20 more minutes to fully extend out those explanations and stuff. And boom, you would have had a perfect movie. I would have given that, like, a 9 out of 10. Like, it's so close to being so good. Again, in, like, DC movie context where they haven't had a great track record. So I'm not, like, holding this up to a Marvel movie level 8 out of 10. But a DC 8 out of 10. Like, it was really good. I enjoyed this movie. And I'm sorry if that makes anybody mad. We all can have our own opinions. They both exist. I can just watch this one. I don't need to watch the Snyderverse. You can just watch the Snyderverse. You don't need to watch this one. But at the end of the day, I liked this one more. It definitely needs some fixes. It's not perfect in any sense. But overall, I was more excited to watch this movie than I was the other one. So that's my take. Hopefully, maybe, don't be too mad at me. For any other things for Kai's Corner Productions, please check out our website and our socials. Please go to our newsletter to sign up for it. It's at the bottom of every page on our website. There's a little slot to put your email. Please sign up for that. That's going to be like the first place to go. Please head over to our Discord where you can talk directly with us. We have several discussion pages. We have discussions for Marvel's stuff, for the DCEU and the Arrowverse that I'm working on. We have stuff for Ruby. There's so much. There's so much on our Discord. If you want to get more involved in the discussion, please, I welcome you to come to that channel and give me some of your opinions, and I'll better explain some of mine. But overall, I did like both of these. I just prefer this one. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time. And there's a blog that has this on there as well, so please go and check that out. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching.
You can check out our website for all the content we produce.
Clicking all those YouTube buttons makes it so you see more content from myself and the other amazing creators at Kai's Corner Productions. All donations help us produce more stuff like that for you.
See you guys in the next one. Peace.